We're still having some conversation about EB5, and most people, when they think of EB5 in South Dakota, Corey Heidelberger included, might think about a failed beef packing plant. But there are some issues surrounding that give cause for concern to a lot of people in South Dakota. It gives rise to more questions than it does answers. Richard Benda is a man whose family and his very life were impacted, and it's pretty obvious that it was directly related somehow to the EB5 and the beef packing plant.
Right. Well, and you know, Gordon, that's not just you saying it or me saying it. Dennis Dugard, our governor, has said as much. There's a news story from earlier during the legislative session where Governor Dugard said he is sure that the stress of the whole GOED, Governor's Office of Economic Development investigation and the EB5 investigation is what led Richard Benda to take his own life. Our governor has said that. So I think it's pretty widely accepted throughout the state that there's a connection between EB5 and not just Richard Benda, who was instrumental in the program, but Richard Benda's untimely death.
And untimely would certainly be accurate, but there are some people, Corey, who are questioning whether shooting yourself in the stomach with a shotgun is really suicide. There are people who are suggesting that, you know, these foreign investors who threw in $500,000 million, some of them didn't get their green cards, and they certainly lost their money. So there are some who are making the allegation that maybe it wasn't a suicide. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yes, there are plenty of people who've wondered that, and certainly in October, when Governor Dugard himself announced that Richard Benda had been found dead near Lake Andes, there's been a lot of speculation, a lot of people wondering what really happened. And even, the Attorney General's report of the nature of the death, a shotgun wound to the abdomen, a lot of people looked at that with the same skepticism I think that you just voiced. I look at it this way. It's a big universe. Lots of things are possible. It's not impossible that an individual suffering from great stress and disappointment, even a family man, could make a bad decision, could choose to end his life. How he would choose to do that, by what means, I'm not one to speculate. Anything is possible, I think, in that regard. And really, just to go to the point of the stress Benda was under, consider the record of what he'd done with EB5. He had overseen the expansion of this program. He had pushed to make this program part of the Hyperion refinery, which would have been a huge moneymaker. That never came through. It failed. He was pushing, we just learned this weekend from Jonathan Ellis of that Sioux Falls paper, that Benda had pushed to have Keystone XL be an EB5 project. That promised enormous wealth, enormous room to recruit investors, and possibly as over $80 million in commissions and fees for Benda and Balin and his other pals. That would have been a huge moneymaker. And that never happened. And then Northern Beef Packers failed. There were a lot of things that, Richard Benda was a part of that he was trying to build that fell apart.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, in the process, there was a lot of money unaccounted for.
Well, there's money unaccounted for, and then we get into, there's a federal investigation, of which we've heard about one subpoena, but according to the governor's office, there are 8 subpoenas total. We haven't heard about the other 7. We don't know what else would have been investigated. So Richard Benda could have been under even more stress than we can imagine. That's pure speculation, but it's possible.
Do we know the names of those 8 people under subpoena?
Well, it's not. That's the thing. It's not 8 people under subpoena. When Governor Dugard announced the federal investigations the day after Richard Benda's funeral last, I think on either October 31st or November 1st, last year fall, he said there were 8 subpoenas issued. Whether those 8 subpoenas were to 8 different people or to groups of people, that has not been made clear. The one subpoena that we've been told about explicitly wasn't even like a subpoena for Richard Benda or Yope Balin or anything. It was a subpoena for some federal grand jury to investigate financial misconduct in the governor's Office of Economic Development.
And that would have been under whose watch?
And that according to Governor Dugard, he said none of that misconduct happened under his watch.
Oh, well, he slept through the Rounds administration.
Under the current governor has said none of that misconduct happened under the current governor, which means it must have happened under the previous governor, who was Mike Rounds, whose friend Richard Benda ran the governor's Office of Economic Development.
And whose lieutenant governor was?
Was Dennis Dugard.
Oh.
But who says he didn't know about what was going on? So that I leave that to voters to decide what that means about who was paying attention and doing due diligence in the Rounds administration.
Thanks for watching. We've got a lot to talk about, but we're out of time and certainly not out of topics.